Okay, great. Thank you very much. We can hear you loud and clear.
I'm going to be off camera. I am going through a lot of difficulties with my leg, and today they medicated me, so I don't feel fit to be in public.
Yes, understood. Thank you, Dr.
Okay,
Lee.
thank you.
Thank you for still participating as you are able. I would like to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all forever.
Before we continue to our regular agenda, I want to just offer a moment of silence for members we have lost in our community, and also give board members a chance to share if they would like to share to that regard. Michael Fox, Sue Gilliam, and two students for whom, to deference to their families, I won't mention their names. I recognize that a moment of silence does not sufficiently replace their presence. But I do want to interrupt regular business because lives have been interrupted. And I just want to acknowledge that. So before our moment of silence, if there are any other board members who would like to speak, I invite them to share. Dr. Joyner.
Over the past couple of weeks, we've lost Susan Gilliam, whose daughter is a principal at Ross Woodward, at Betsy Ross. We got two schools named after her, so. And we've lost recently Michael Fox, who not only was a youth development coordinator, he also was the president of the Youth Football League, which requires at least 30 hours a week. And I've known him since he was about 5 or 6 years old, when he used to come up from down south to be with his aunt. He's a member of the Marks family. Scott Marks, Zane Marks. He's a member of the Booker family. Michael was a gentle giant and one of the kindest people that I've ever met. And of course, that's his family. And we co-mentored a young man who had a lot of difficulty. We co-mentored him all the way through grad school. And we talked him down when he was getting ready to do something that was really, could have been fatal to himself or others. And that young man now has a really good job in Stanford working for a security firm. He has a master's in criminal justice. And there were times when I could reach him, there were times when Mike could reach him. And between the two of us, we were able to help him get through a real difficult time in his life. Sue Gilliam was a math teacher at Hill House. She taught my children. She had a great sense of humor. And my dear friend Lester Turner and I called her Sister Sue, because she was a white woman that had the soul of people like my grandmother and my mother and my wife and what have you. And we called her Sister Gilliam. She wore an afro when she was young. And she married Rudy Gilliam. I used to sing in a gospel group with her husband. And she had these wonderful children. And she was thoroughly dedicated to the children of our school system. And she was one of those math teachers we never had to worry about leaving the system. And I'll miss her. But she was a phenomenal woman. And of course, Michael Fox was a phenomenal young man. And I believe his funeral is going to be on Friday. And I'm hoping that in New Haven, we always try to support people. And I'm hoping that we can support his family. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I'll just ask us to take a moment of silence now. Thank you. Next on our agenda is a time for public participation. Welcome to the Board of Education regular meeting. Regular meetings are a time for the board to conduct its business. As a Board of Education, we are here to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. The board may hear public participation for up to 60 minutes. Public participation shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. One speaker cannot yield their time to another speaker. There will be no responses this evening to any questions or concerns raised. They will be referred to the administration for review. As adults, we serve as positive role models for our students. Please be respectful of people. We ask speakers not to make defamatory comments or use abusive or vulgar language. Dr. White, are we ready for public comment?
Yes, Dr. President, right now we only have one raised hands. We have no signed in hands here.
Thank you.
Our first speaker is Stu Katz.
Hello, can you folks hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. My name is Stuart Katz. I am a product of the New Haven Public Schools. I attended Davis Street School, Sheridan, and my beloved Richard C. Lee High School. I am speaking today in support of one of your upcoming discussions to name the court at Floyd Little Athletic Center in honor of Bob Lamel, who was at Lee High School when I was a student there, and Red Verderam. Two gentlemen who transformed athletics in the New Haven Public Schools in a very positive way. Bob Lamel created programs to help the athletes with their grades, very important, not only for their academic pursuits, but also to help the teams be successful. And Red, obviously, as a very long time successful coach and administrator in the school system. I hope that this action is passed. I think it's a very fitting tribute to both of these gentlemen. And that's about all I have to say at the moment. Thank you very much for listening.
Our next speaker is Pamela Kelly.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Pamela Monk Kelly, and I would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Robert Lamel. He significantly impacted my life, both as a student and later as a teacher at Lee High School. As an athletic director, he served as a mentor and my direct supervisor when I was a cheerleader advisor. He also was responsible for encouraging my high school sweetheart, Larry Kelly, a basketball standout, to play for Lee High School, and we have been married over 43 years. Another example, Mr. Lamel transformed young boys into young men. He went into the inner city and created a basketball dynasty. He influenced many to become coaches. Again, my husband, Larry, went on to follow in Bob's footsteps, becoming a head basketball coach, winning a state championship and earning Coach of the Year honors. The criteria for naming a building or a portion of the building requires significant contributions. Mr. Lamel's contributions outpaced his time of service as he reorganized athletics in New Haven and the state through the creation of the Super Conference of Urban and Suburban Schools. He was also the first basketball coach at Lee. Peter Evans served under Bob. Robert Norman Lamel is now 84 and is living in Naples, Florida. Bob was instrumental in bringing New Haven basketball games to the Coliseum, which resulted in attendance figures sometimes reaching 5,000 people at the high school basketball game. An amazing feat. Extensive documentation of this can be found in the New Haven Register archives. He is what I would call a warrior. He is a deeply moral man who possessed the uncommon courage to stand up for righteous causes. We want to celebrate Bob Lamel's accomplishment with a lifetime achievement recognition. Thank you for your time.
Dr. President, that concludes all raised hands.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is the approval, or our action items, the approval of minutes of March 10th, 2025.
So move.
Second. Andre.
Thank you very much for the motion and the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Wilcox is not here. Well, should have started. Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries. Next is the personnel report of Dr. Negron.
Good evening, board members. Before I ask for approval of the personnel report, I do want to recognize the following retirements. We have Sandra Walker, school social worker, who will be retiring on June 3rd after serving 33 years with the New Haven Public Schools, as well as Ilcia Medero, a Head Start teacher who retired on March 3rd after serving for 34 years. Those are my retirements. And I also have an appointment that is in the personal report. And I want to be able to tell you a little bit about Ms. Brittany Dukran before you go through the approvals. Brittany Dukran, who is here with us today, has served as a supervisor for special education and has dedicated nearly 22 years to special education within the New Haven Public Schools, taking on various roles to support students with diverse learning needs. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Special Education, a Master's of Science in Special Education, and a 6 years degree in Educational Leadership and Administration. Mrs. Dukran has taught in different educational settings throughout her tenure in the New Haven Public Schools. Her commitment to individualized instruction and student success has driven her to work closely with families and educators, ensuring equal access to education for all students. For the past 3 years, Mrs. Dukran has served as an administrative intern in the Department of Student Services, where she has further developed her leadership skills and expanded her impact on district-wide special education initiatives. She is deeply committed to fostering collaboration among teams, administrators, parents, and community members to create inclusive and supportive learning environments. Mrs. Dukran's professional approach is significantly influenced by her personal experiences as a parent of a child with autism. This perspective has enhanced her ability to advocate for students and families, ensuring every child receives the support and opportunities necessary to thrive. Her dedication to teamwork, equity, and student-centered practices continues to shape her work in special education. And with that, I present my personal report.
Thank you so very much. Is there a motion for the personnel report?
Mr. Chair, I move to accept the superintendent's personnel report.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Thank you, Ms. Downer. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox is not here. Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. That motion carries, and congratulations.
Chairman Yarborough, is it acceptable to invite Mrs. Dukran up to say a few words?
Yes, please.
Good evening. I'm truly honored and grateful to accept the position of Supervisor of Special Education for New Haven Public Schools. I want to thank the Board of Education, the Superintendent, Dr. Negron, the Executive Director of Pupil Services, Tiffany Jackson, and as well as the Selection Committee for this incredible opportunity. I, of course, also want to thank my husband, Nick, and my two daughters, Ava and Naomi, for supporting me throughout this journey. I have been very fortunate to be surrounded by amazing leaders, colleagues in our department, and teaching colleagues throughout my time in New Haven. Special education is a field that requires passion, patience, and a deep commitment to equity, and I am proud to be a part of a team that shares those values. I look forward to working collaboratively with my staff, with our families and community partners to ensure every student receives the support and opportunities that they deserve. Thank you again. I am excited for what lies ahead, and I can't wait to get started. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. I'll continue through the action items. And as a heads up for our student team, for the finance and operations, I'll relocate that until Mr. Wilcox comes. So if he's not here, I'll go to you next. All right, thank you. First, we have take them one at a time. Discussion and possible action, and I ask your apologies to correct my spelling, but discussion and possible action on proposal to name the Adult Education Center, the Dr. Edmonds Adult Education Center. Dr. Joyner?
I am moving to name the New Haven Adult Education Center the Reverend Dr. Edwin Edmonds Adult Educational Center. And after, I'm hoping that we can get unanimous consent, I would like to comment on the virtues of the Right Reverend Dr. Edwin Edmonds.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Yes, Dr. Joyner.
Okay, we've been working on this for 3 years. A number of people approached me about trying to honor Reverend Edmonds Cliff Graves, Judge Graves, Reverend Streets, Michael Twitty, Charles Warner, and people that had gone to the church. And I can't feel any stronger about the merits of this man for us to honor him. He was born in Texas, and if you ever saw him, he could have easily passed for white. He attended Morehouse College. He joined Omega Psi Phi fraternity. And in concert with his family legacy, he took the torch that his father handed to him, and he decided that he was going to be in the freedom business. The picture you see is Reverend Edmonds and I at Wexler School starting a book collection for the kids. At a young age, he had an accident and he became blind. But although he was blind, he had more vision than just about anybody. I met him when I was 20 years old, and I was a program analyst for Community Progress, and he created a program called the Dixwell Children's Creative Arts Center. And that was before they built the new church, and I was immediately impressed with him and was able to help him with the program. And at that time, we were in the Great Society with Lyndon Johnson, and we got money, federal money, to start the center. Great leaders are transformative. They make a way out of no way. And they have a strong moral core, and they care more about the suffering of others than they do their own suffering. And Reverend Edmonds could have easily been a pastor of a mega church. He could have had a plane, a Rolls Royce, jewelry, custom-made suits. And I don't need to go too far down that road because I think you know what's going on with that particular issue. But he stayed in this community, built his church in this community, and we became the first Black president of the New Haven School Board. He transformed this community. And the reason that some of you are here right now is because Reverend Edmonds opened the floodgates. And quite frankly, you're all DEI, determined, excellent, with integrity. That's the DEI that he operated from. He wanted people to be determined, excellent, and have integrity, and to support the fundamental tenets of this country: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all, regardless of race, color, creed, religion, and so on and so forth. So he was a giant. And although blind, he had more vision than just about anybody I knew. He actually predated Martin Luther King. He was attacked by the Ku Klux Klan in Greensboro. He moved to Delaware, and he finally came to New Haven in the 1960s, and the rest is history. I am a direct beneficiary of his tutelage and his unswerving commitment to put the best people in front of children and to hold people accountable. And I can't think of a better tribute than to have an institution that educates adults from all walks of life, from all parts of the world, so that they can have the education and training and be a benefit to society and to themselves. So I implore you to not only name it after him, but let this board go on record as being unanimous in that.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Dr. Benitez.
Yes, I want to add to what Dr. Joyner has said about Dr. Edmonds. Coming to New Haven much later than the 60s. I came in the 80s, and Dr. Edmonds was one of those people who encouraged me to have my voice heard, to make sure that my people were seen, to make sure that nobody would stop my advocacy for children in this city. So he not only touched his community in the sense of the African American community, but he touched New Haven. He felt that it was important for every single one of us, regardless of what population we came from, or what country, or what socioeconomic plight, that we will all have representation in the city and that our voices were heard. So I have to say that I agree. As a former adult education educator, I could see how this is a great name to put on a building that supports adults and supports, more than anything, our young people who find the need to an alternative when they have responsibilities with family and with community. So thank you. I fully support this.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Yes, Mr. Waters.
I'm sorry, I don't know much about the Reverend Edmund, but he sounds like an amazing person from what I've been able to read about him. But I would just ask, could we double check the spelling of his name as it appears in our minutes? Because I think there may be a spelling error. I believe his name is Edmund? Yeah, and our notes, I believe in our agenda have his name Edmund.
Yes, I made a mistake.
Okay, I just wanted to, before we name a building incorrectly, just to.
Before
make sure
that
we did
stone is chiseled, huh? Thank you for your thoughtfulness. Additional discussion? Seeing none, we will vote. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Mr. Wilcox is not here. That motion carries. Thank you. Our next action item is discussion and possible action on proposal to name the court at the Floyd Little Athletic Center, the Robert Lamel Salvatore Verderame Court. Dr. Joyner?
Mr. Chair, I move to name the court at the Floyd Little Athletic Center after Robert Lamel and Salvatore Verderame.
Thank you. I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Downer. Any discussion? Dr. Joyner?
I have an allergy, so if it looks like I'm crying, I'm not really crying. An allergy. I graduated from a high school in the South that was funded by a Jewish philanthropist named Julian Rosenwald. And there is a concept in Judaism called tikkun olam. And it means to repair the world. Rosenwald established Sears and Roebuck, and when he died, he left, well, actually when he lived, he met with Booker T. Washington, and he wanted to build Black schools in the South because of tikkun olam. He would fund a third of the costs, and he asked the citizens to raise the rest. And so when people talk about DEI, it was determination, excellence, and integrity, because there was not a lot of help, but for this Jewish philanthropist. When Bob, and he built over 8,000 schools in the South. 6 of them were in the county that I graduated from. So that means that thousands and thousands of children that graduated from high schools, when there were some counties that didn't even have high school, owed their good fortune to a Jewish benefactor. When Bob Lamel came to New Haven at Lee High School, he came with that same mindset. Because as a person that belonged to a group that were systematically murdered and exterminated, he could feel the pain of Black people. And quite frankly, all of my Jewish friends are like that. So what did Bob do? One, he defended kids. 2, he encouraged them to be their own best selves. When we would play teams in other communities and encounter some stuff that we shouldn't have to encounter, and Peter Evans knows about that, Bob was the first person to stand up front and say, this is not going to happen. He appointed the first Black football coach in New Haven, and that was my best friend from college, Wade Robinson. He would take kids home with him. He would buy them clothing if necessary. He would send them money when they were in college. And as Pam said, he made so much money at the Coliseum by saying, you know, we should have high school games here. And imagine a school system where kids play in a professional Coliseum. And what I wanted to do is, while he was still alive, to let him know how much we appreciated his courage, his honesty, his transparency, his empathy, his vision, and his unconditional love for the children that he taught. And he lives in, he might even be watching this, but this picture with him and Pam tells a lot about the kind of man he was. When I first met him, he didn't have a beard, but he looks a lot better with a beard. And he was also, he grew up in the Bronx. He played basketball at DeWitt Clinton High School, and he's probably the all-around greatest player to ever play at the University of Bridgeport. And he built that super conference so that kids from New Haven could interact with kids from other parts of the state and build the kind of brotherhood that is so necessary in this world. Red Verderam, first generation Italian American out of Sicily. For a lot of his life, he lived in a single parent home. And a Marine, and possibly the greatest basketball coach in the history of this state. But what did Red do for us? Red loved Africa, and he worked for the State Department, and he coached the Egyptian national team in the Olympics. He would bring West Africans and East Africans to this country to learn the game. He would take coaches from this country to West Africa and East Africa to work. And then all of a sudden he decided that he wanted the kids in the city to have a chance to go to Africa. You know that old saying, you can never go home again? Well, a lot of Black kids in this community went home again. And he raised money, and he spent money out of his own pocket to get the program started. And there's so many children in this city that had a chance to leave this community and go to Zimbabwe, Malawi, Sierra Leone, places like that, And I'll never forget when he brought an Egyptian general to my house that was active in sports in Egypt. And I'll never forget when his son, who attended a private school in the area, I won't name, brought a newspaper to him that really demonized Black children in the inner city. And he brought that newspaper to Emma Ruff and I, and he said, we have to do something about this. So he and I went to the private school. We met with the headmaster, and we demanded a retraction. And we told him that if he didn't retract it, that we would have all of New Haven on his campus on the next day. And sometimes you have to play hardball. And of course, he did retract it, and we started a relationship with that private school where they would come to New Haven and learn that we were not all what they thought we were. And we would go to their schools and learn that they weren't as smart as we thought they were. Because if they were, they wouldn't have written that stupid article. So I'm not going to name I'm not going to name the school. But he could have been silent on that. His son could have been. But his son Jeff said, that's not right. And that's the kind of man he was. And he was a father figure to me. And he was a principal at Hill House. And it was the safest school in America when he was doing it. So I really believe that we can honor him, his memory, and we can honor Mr. Lamel and his memory if we name that court. Now you got three great people, Floyd Little, Red Verderam, and Bob Lamel. And Bob is alive and well. So I would ask for a unanimous vote on this as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. We'll now vote. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Would you like to vote? Mr. Wilcox?
I don't think it's proper for me to vote on an item when I haven't heard the discussion, but I fully support naming the court and also naming adult education after Reverend Dr. Edmonds. But I don't think it's proper for me.
I
to
know,
vote on it,
I
so.
just got you as you walked in. That motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Wilcox, would you like us to go to the student report or go to you?
If we could, that'd be great. And allow me a moment to get situated. And my apologies to everyone for being tardy.
He has a good excuse.
Ms. Cologne, Mr. Musser? Thank you.
So March 19th, a Wednesday, around 8:23, 75 to 80 students left New Haven to go up to Hartford on a train to testify on the SB 1511 bill. 3 New Haven public students were prepped by two civic-centered organizations, Connecticut for All and New Haven Rising, to speak on the Education Committee, on a panel for the Education Committee, and then 3 more spoke during a press conference. One of those students gave out a poem sharing her experience in New Haven Public Schools. And then afterwards, many other students actually testified about their experience in New Haven Public Schools. So basically, all the way back in the fall, I was giving a presentation to students about how the state had billions of dollars in budget surplus. And many of the students could not reconcile the fact that their schools were in the conditions that they were with the fact that the state continuously breaks surplus records. So we decided that we would go up to the state capitol and testify, give our experiences, and demand that our education is more equitable to the surrounding areas like Greenwich and Westport. So we connected with students in every single school, and they organized and connected with students who want to go up to Hartford and agree with our petition statement. And then afterwards, students reached out to other organizations to raise money for transportation. And then students also helped plan logistics from how to get to the train station on time to the time they left. So again, this was a student initiative. Although Connecticut for All helped us a lot, at the end of the day, the students were doing the heavy lifting.
And so with social media, we used it to cover the whole event. And so we had organizations such as New Haven Rising, New Haven Independent, CT for All, CT Mirror, Fox 61, WTNH to cover the whole event. And if we see in the white highlighted, those are the views for each post. And we can see that it did get a lot of coverage, and we're really excited and happy for that. And so we can see the posts were widely spread. And so the impact of the event, students felt very connected and they felt very unified after this. They felt like they were being heard. And it's very impactful to hear them say that, and knowing that this event gave them that kind of outlet. And they also said this felt like a very educational experience about learning about government, civic processes, and also seeing how there are other districts out there that are also struggling with the same issues.
So again, our goal was to also create, or not only testify on SB 1511 and hopefully get it passed to see our district and districts like it to get more funding, but also to create the tradition of students in New Haven to engage in the civic processes and hopefully, use all the frustration that we have about our educational experiences and, redirect it into a place where we could, improve our experience. And we also wanted to demonstrate to the student body that as students, we can organize, and it is possible for us to go to Hartford and speak our minds. And we don't necessarily, as much as we love the support of NHPS, we don't need the direct support of NHPS. We ourselves as a student body can do it. And it gave the students a sense of empowerment. Usually at citywide meetings, all we do is sit down and discuss about closed bathrooms, faulty facilities, and vacant teachers. But that day, we went down and told someone about it that could possibly, pass a bill that could change our experience. We also established the role of citywide student council and the student representatives, not only as people to go to Board of Education meetings and hear proposals, but also to, go out and actually fight for our district as well and for our student body. And just special thanks to New Haven Rising, Connecticut for All, and the New Haven Teachers Federation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? Mr. Wilcox?
I just have a comment. I just want to commend you all and all your colleagues for going and doing this. I was tuning in throughout the day and listening in on at the Education Committee, which was a long day's journey in tonight, because I also provided some testimony, but I was, I think, third from the last, and thankfully they allow it on Zoom now. But it was very powerful watching the reactions of all the students, because there were students from other towns as well that spoke. The Education Committee members, our representatives were listening, and they were paying attention, and you could tell that it wasn't like they're being nice, like, oh, these are cute kids. It's like, no, they were listening. And so you all were delivering your message, and I think they heard that. And I do think that it's important that we all continue to push this message. Bills like SB, was it 1511? Yeah. Is the one that's going to do things like index ECS funding to inflation. And just as an example, if minimum wage was indexed to inflation when it was first set up, federal minimum wage, it would be about $25 an hour now. So when people set formulas and don't index it to inflation, I mean, our egg prices, et cetera, are indexed to inflation and so on. So things like that, and also changing the weights to account for more equitable distribution for the districts, for other students that have more special needs or need more assistance. This is going to be so important. There's other bills regarding special education and also helping create the next wave of teachers. And so I think it's so important that you all did that. And I hope the rest of us talk to our legislators. I think our New Haven delegation is great. They are supportive of education. And I think some are on, Representative Paolillo and Senator Winfield are on the Education Committee where these bills are originating, but I know our others are as well. But we also need to help them by showing the importance of this funding. And so thank you so much, because I think a student voice is going to carry a lot more than some of ours. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Joyner, then Mayor Elicker.
I think what you just heard from Matt speaks to how valuable he is on this board in terms of analyzing policy and breaking it down and helping people understand where the source of the problem is. I am so proud of these young people, because as a person who taught courses that dealt with social change and specifically the civil rights and human rights movement, many of the early leaders in those movements were very young. Martin Luther King was in his 20s when he led the Montgomery bus boycott. Stokely Carmichael was a student at Howard when he led the Student Nonviolent Coordinator Committee. And I had a gifted student, Michael Green, who has 2 doctorates now, and one in theology, one in economics. And he was 15 when he joined the Black Panther Party here in New Haven and led students just like you guys, fighting the same battles. I don't think we should ever feel guilty in New Haven about asking for what we deserve. And when we live in a city that has less than 50% taxable properties, and when we're underfunded in education, we typically have to borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and at the same time try to keep taxes reasonable. So there's a disproportionate burden on cities like ours, and we have to continue to demand justice and just allocation of funding. We don't have to apologize, because that's money that we pay taxes, state, federal, and local taxes. And they're not giving us anything other than managing and reallocating money that we have sent to the coffers of the state and federal government. And I think it's really important for us to understand that, because as having hospitals, colleges, churches, and other institutions that are taxed, not taxable, puts a disproportionate burden on taxpayers in this city. You're literally subsidizing the people that come in and use your hospitals, your colleges, and worship. You're literally subsidizing that group of people. And that's a problem across urban America. And Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. And I implore you to keep studying the issues, organizing, and making peaceful demands. And if they don't work, boycotts, but never violence.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mayor Elicker.
I usually don't gush about people, but Mr. Musser and Ms. Cologne were awesome. And it was, I took the train up with you all, as you know, And it was so inspiring to be standing at the train station and just student after student after student coming in. The adults that are regular organizers said, I can't get this many adults at things. And then you gave a number of speeches. It was a very, very proud day for New Haven. And we opened up many people's eyes at the Capitol because these students took the Capitol by storm. I also want to thank Mr. Wilcox for sticking it out until late in the evening to testify. Dr. Yarbrough also submitted a written testimony. Thank you for doing that as well. The final thing I'd say is this is far from done. And so one of the organizing messages is you have 80 identified students that you know will act. And so you want to activate those students for the next step to push this because we need to keep it on the radar. And so happy to keep working with you all, but you led the way on this and it was really inspiring. Thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Well done. Thank you, student team. Good job. Next action item category in our agenda, finance and operations. Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you very much. And again, my apologies for being tardy this evening. And my congratulations to the new hirees and honorees that you all approved. So thank you. Moving into the F&O action items, is there anything anybody would like moved separately? And I'm also going to be moving the 2 certifications separately as well. Ms. Downer, if I may, I'm sorry.
Yes, Ms. Downer.
Yes, I was looking to see 6.1 and 6.2 move separately.
Certainly.
Mayor Elicker.
Could we have the 4.03, the adult education lease, move separately as well, please?
Yes. All right. So the first thing I'll do is I move that we approve item 7.02, the Healthy Food Certification Statement.
I second that. Any discussion?
Just
Mr. Wilcox?
Just as an explanation, for some of these certifications, the funders require them to be separate items, moved separately, et cetera. And we've had to go back and redo this in the past. So that's the reason for it.
Other discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mr. Juarez?
Yes.
Ms. Cologne?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion carries.
All right. Next, I move that we approve item 7.03, an additional healthy food certification statement.
Second, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Mr. Juarez?
Yes.
Ms. Cologne?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries.
All right. Next, I move that we approve purchase orders 6.01 and 6.02 regarding ABM.
I second. Any discussion? Ms. Downer?
Yes. Do you want to, I guess it's 6.1, you want to talk about that, or we could talk about them both? I'm not sure how you want me to address this, but both of them are sort of along the lines of, just something ain't right. We got ABM paying SJ Services, and we got discrepancies on whether the 186 employees back in November actually was on our school grounds. And we also have discrepancies of absenteeism. So they say they were here. We have them as being absent. So now we have SJ Services subcontracting. No, I'm sorry. ABM subcontracting to SJ Services to fulfill our, I guess from December 1st to February 28th, they were doing, let's see, had it down here. They were, I guess, doing some cleaning, setting up for pre-post cleaning, litter patrol, setting up tables, bathroom cleaning, for any activities at the Floyd Little Athletic building, but we don't have any evidence of them actually doing the work. So we have a bill here for $157 that they paid, that they contracted with SJ Services, $157, $264, and $39,000. And we also have, we don't even have with our documents the actual contract, the subcontract that they actually have with ABM and SJ Services. So we're unable to see that. It's really a lot of stuff that's just not right. And there's a lot of discrepancy. And when I did the math a little bit, there was no early warning to the board. Number two, if we're at this amount, by the time we get to by the time we get to June 30th, we're going to be at almost $500,000 again owed to ABM. Now, last year, we were doing the same thing. We cannot expect a different result today. I'm going to ask today that this gets tabled. You have almost 200 grand sitting here. Now, I'm just questioning if we have any student events, who's paying? Because we have no money, but we have privatization. It's not making sense. Because if we have no money, we don't even have any way of getting out of this contract with ABM. So I'm just wondering, where is the contract between ABM and SJ Services? I saw the purchase order, the requests go in, but I never saw the contract itself. And where's the evidence? So I want to ask that it get tabled today, because we have a contract with SJ Services to clean our schools. The board did not make the contract. ABM did. But they're asking us to pay with no evidence, no early warning, nothing. There's a discrepancy here, whether they showed up or not. There's plenty of times people have told me that the custodian didn't even show up today. So if we know this happened, we should not be paying them for not showing up and not doing our job, doing the job that we contracted them to do. So if that's available, maybe that will be available to the board right now or tomorrow or whenever, but this needs to be tabled. This is just not right at all levels. We have a subcontract here. We have no evidence. We have no early warning. It's not right. So I'm asking today that my colleagues that sit on the board will agree that this needs to be tabled until we can investigate what's going on.
Thank you, Ms. Downer, for raising your topics. I also hear about it being tabled. Mr. Carter has joined the conversation. Would you please respond?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yarbrough. The contract with, it's not a contract between ABM and SJ Services. And I put some context to it. The contract, ABM did not write the contract for SJ Services for custodial services. That was done by New Haven Public Schools. When I arrived here in June of last year, there was a proposal to add an extra $500,000 to the SJ Services contract. I had no idea why it was being added. Come to find out that SJ Services was charging us for hours that could not be accounted for. So we went to the F&O meeting. The recommendation was made to monitor the contract and put things in place so that we would not have this overage again. Come November, we've been meeting with SJ Services to say, hey, you are to provide us with a list of folks who do not come every day, as well as the number of permanent events you're working, people and hours. They did not provide that information. We met with them weekly. We had a corp counsel, we had finance, procurement on the call, and they refused to cooperate. They said the bill is the bill. And then they told us a week before Thanksgiving that they're not going to do any more permitted events after we had showed, because we audited the hours and reports of daily absences, that they were not providing the number of personnel or providing services for the number of events. So they chose to walk off. I agree that the board was not giving sufficient information. I mentioned in December, but at that time, we were still dealing with SJ not wanting to provide services. I went through non-negotiated procurement with ABM to provide services in the interim. And we have a spreadsheet that shows that compared to last year and this year, ABM, while the cost hourly rate was higher, they actually saved us over $30,000 compared to SJ Services last year. The lesson learned from this whole process was that the RFP did not have in place the monitoring mechanisms to validate the hours worked, the hours not worked, as well as permitted events. Now SJ Services gives us a breakout of permanent events, listing the people and the hours, as well as the number of people who show the work, as well as a list of no-shows, which we never did get, which should have been in the contract in the first place. That's going to be in the second contract. ABM has nothing to do with a contract with SJ Services. As of last week, SJ Services, because they realized that we were not yielding in on paying bills without documentation, has now agreed to provide permitted services, permitted hours, as well as the documentation so we can pay them accordingly. We monitored December. It was significantly lower due to the holiday. We monitored January. There were some hours where they had people show up and we deducted that amount from their invoice. We're looking at February. It's pretty even. So we've saved a significant amount of money compared to last year. The issue is not ABM. Per se, it's not SJ Services. The RFP that was put together does not give us the monitoring mechanisms and the punitive measures to take when we're being overcharged by a contractor. And we made certain that in the RFP, which is on the street now, we met last week or early in the week, and we had 18 participants on the call, that's not going to happen. So you could say that we have all the documentation. I wrote a memo. If you want all the hours work, we could put that in with the memo. But this was where we have basically had to intervene in the crisis in the process of saving money, and also knowing that the next contract will not have loose ends where the contractor basically charges us anything we want. And in the past, we basically paid. And basically, we don't do that anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. I believe we need to vote on this table.
Yeah, yeah.
There hasn't been a motion, it hasn't been seconded.
Right, right.
Okay. Thank you again, Ms. Downer, for raising it, Mr. Carter, for your response. Dr. Joyner?
We're gonna, first of all, before I think we have to make a motion as you indicated.
Okay.
And I hope we're at the right point because we didn't motion to accept it, so we're still in a position where we can make a motion to table. Is that correct?
Mr. Wilcox?
So yes, so a motion to table can be made by anybody that has the floor.
Right, so, okay.
And then we would discuss whether or not to table it and then vote on that before we would go back to this item.
Right, so I'm gonna second the motion to table, and then I'd like to comment on why. And also, at the same time, thank Mr. Carter and Ms. Downer and Mr. Wilcox. Because that was a long meeting. I watched some of, and you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna second the motion to table.
No, I have that is not debatable.
The motion table is not debatable, so we have to debate it.
So we just vote.
We'll just vote, okay,
Okay.
good.
So we're gonna take a vote. Ms. Downer? And we're voting on a motion to table. Ms. Downer?
Yes, to table.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes to table.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez?
Yes.
Mr. Juarez?
Abstain.
Ms. Cologne?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. So the motion to table carries.
Point of clarification.
Yes, Mayor Elicker?
The
Mayor Elicker?
motion was to table 6.01 and 6.02 or just one?
We took them together, so I
Okay,
think both.
thank you.
Can there be initial conversation? I would like it. Dr. Joyner?
Yes. One, first of all, let me applaud the board because I watched the meeting and then I heard this discussion. I heard Mr. Carter. And if it's confusing to me, I'm sure it's really confusing to people who didn't have a chance to watch the meeting. But here's my takeaway. One, from our standpoint, we will continue to have problems until we can find staff that can put eyes on situations like that. And until we can write contracts that are tight enough to protect the district and have surveillance systems that are strong enough so that if somebody bills us for 20 people, we can say, name them and show evidence that they were actually on the job. And that's where not having sufficient resources to provide adequate staffing is a real problem for us. And the scarcity of facilities management people is also a challenge, and chief operation officers. The other thing is that no matter what the contract says, if a vendor bills you for 20 oranges and they only delivered 5, that's fraud. I don't care what the unit is, what the commodity is, what the service is. If you present a document and a bill to a company you serve, and that does not reflect the real services provided, then that's an attempt to deceive in any court in a democratic country. And right now, our country is still democratic. And so even if we didn't have the best contract, the idea that we got a bill and there was no evidence that that work was done by the number of people that they said it was is problematic. The other real problem is that how far does this go back? Is this the first time? Or it's the first time that people were caught? And so I'm glad you're tabling this because I believe it necessitates a deeper investigation and a way to look at as much data as we can to determine that. Why? Because it happened before in the district. With another vendor, and I see Ms. Jackson out there, and there was a person that was billing us for psychological services, and the bill was twice as large as what documentation they brought to bear to justify the bill. And thankfully, at the time, Will Clark was on top of just about everything. We didn't have as many vendors. But this is not the first time that something like that has happened in the system. And I'm sure it happens not only in this system, but in other places where you don't have systems in place to, one, establish a strong contract that protects you, two, to make sure that you trust people, but you verify that the bills they're sending you reflect the services that they provided. So thank you, board, all of you, for seeing that and not going through this just to go through it, because we have to protect the little money that we do have.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Ms. Downer?
Yes, I just wanted to just clarify just my thought process. I thought that when ABM came in and they said we owed them $500,000, we didn't just place $500,000 on the books for them to use. They came and said we owed them. So now here it is. We have $200,000 that they're saying that we owe them, and God knows whatever they're going to charge us for March 1st to June 30th, if we have any events at Floyd Little Athletic Center, then that means that we might be owing them again up to $500,000.
The 500,000 was for SJ Services. It was not for ABM.
Point of order.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Now,
No problem.
the issue
Mr. Carter?
we did not get to
Mr.
you
Carter?
was that ABM is a
point of order.
stopgap.
Mr. Carter, can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm done.
No, I want you to reply, but one moment.
I think the board shares the concerns. The item's been tabled. It's not on the table anymore. So
Right. I'm just
respectfully, I think we
right. He
Thank
can
you.
go ahead and talk.
Thank you. That's right. We did table the item. We voted on it, and it's
Mhm.
non-discussable right
Okay.
now. We'll move it
No
back
problem.
to F&O. But thank you for everyone's diligence on this, so we can clarify, what we're doing. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor Elicker. Continue, please, Mr. Wilcox.
So I'm going to continue, but before I do, I'm just going to have a request. I know that the superintendent's team will review this meeting and will pull from it the questions and comments that people have so that they can respond at the next F&O and create a memo with more details. So I do request that if people have other questions, and this would be members of the board or members of the public, et cetera, to also send those questions to the superintendent and to the Finance and Operations Committee. And I do just want to clarify one thing, is that it is, as it is in the memo, the root of this issue is concerns with SJ Services and ABM. This district was asking ABM to step in to provide some of these services. These details are in the memo. I'm not going to get into them now, but did just want to clarify that before we move forward. So the next item is I move that we approve item 4.03, which is the lease for the adult education space.
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Mayor Elicker?
I just had a couple of questions on this that are related to contracted negotiations. And I spoke briefly with Attorney Alexiadis earlier on, and I think it is appropriate that we go into executive session to discuss this. I'm sorry to inconvenience everyone having to go into another room, but if there's no objections, then I'd like to move that we go into executive session.
Second.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. Let's vote.
I cannot hear you if you are talking to us.
Mine is working without.
Okay,
Now it's working.
okay. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
this is for an executive session. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes?
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne,
Yes.
Mr. Musser.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. We supposed to name who's supposed to be in the meeting? Mr. Wilcox?
Yes. I suggest we pull into executive session the superintendent and attorney Alexiadis. And if there's somebody else I'm forgetting, please add that too.
Attorney Alexiadis, is there anyone else who should be in this? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So the link is being sent. We will now enter executive session. Thank you. The board has returned from executive session. No votes were taken.
I move to table the item.
Second.
Okay, there's a move to table the item, and it's been seconded. I will take a vote. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez is not yet on. Ms. Downer?
Yes.
She said yes.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Juarez?
Yes.
Ms. Cologne? Oh, not yet. Mr. Musser?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries. Mr. Wilcox?
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and make the main motion here. I move that we approve the remaining 2 agreements, the 1 amendment, the remaining 3 purchase orders, and the remaining resolution.
Second.
Okay, thank you. That has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? See none, we'll vote. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Dr. Joyner?
Yes.
Dr. Benitez has not returned. Ms. Downer?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Juarez?
Yes.
Mr. Musser?
Yes.
Mayor Elicker?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries. Next on the agenda, our superintendent's report. Dr. Negron?
Thank you, Chairman Yarborough. Before I start, I know that you did acknowledge the students during the meeting. I also wanted to express my gratitude to Giancarlos and Jonalis for the excellent job that they did advocating for the resources that are very much needed in our district. And it just warmed my heart just to see all of you just lifting student voice. So thank you again for brainstorming that. And basically that, like you said, that was all you, all the students. The adults didn't have anything to do with it. As you said, you didn't need adult help. You thought about it, you grabbed it, you seized the moment, and you executed. So congratulations again for that. I also wanted to take a moment to thank the staff or NHPS staff, also to thank the community. As you mentioned, Dr. Yarborough, at the beginning, when we took the moment of silence, we lost 2 student lives, as well as staff, all in a span of a week. And anytime we lose children, that takes a huge toll on the adults that still have to grieve, but at the same time continue to lead their teams. So I do want to again thank the building principals, like the principal over at Riverside, the principal over at Clemente. I want to thank Dr. Joseph Lumpkin. Again, these 3 leaders really had to balance, right, grieving at the same time that they were there to support their staff and their students. I also want to thank the Monroe Trumbull, Connecticut chapter of the Binky Patrol. They deliver blankets to our 2nd graders over at Clemente. So again, just to show that it wasn't just our community coming together, but other communities that saw that we were grieving, and they also came together to support us. Today, for my update, and Dr. White is going to be helping me, I am here to talk about a school merger. Before I walk you through the details of the merger, I do want to go to our path to excellence. As you may, I know you are aware that we have 4 very clear priorities that we have been working on, that were developed collaboratively with our entire community. One of those priorities is operational efficiencies. And as part of that priority, one of the strategies is to align resources to achieve equity across our schools and across our programs, as well as another strategy to make sure that we are aiming for sustainability planning. So I wanted to ground my update today on this merger back to our path to excellence, which I've been communicating since the inception, that we have a path. We have a path to move forward that, again, was designed with our stakeholders. So what is the purpose of this merger? This merger that we are going to be embarking upon, that will bring together Lincoln Bassett and Wexler Grant. The whole idea here is to make sure that we are creating stronger and more supportive educational experiences for all of our students, while addressing the realities of declining enrollment, at the same time that we are addressing the realities of limited educational resources. So I am thinking about the now, but I'm also thinking about the future, and knowing the challenges that we have, how can we do better, again, at working within our resources to continue to ensure that we are executing on the promise of a public education for all of our students. It's important to know that enrollment has been declining at these particular schools, as well as other schools in our district, dating back to 2017, with Wexler being impacted more severely since 2017. We had a test fit that was conducted by the architects, Perkins Eastman, to confirm that the merger was a concept that was both feasible, but could also effectively address our enrollment trends, right? Because people can say, hey, they're small putting together, but you know that I am all about data, and I needed to have the analysis to know, well, yeah, it works now, but can it work in the future? So the architects, again, are Perkins Eastman, were the ones who conducted the test fit. Lincoln Bassett, according to that test fit, is the facility that can accommodate the combined student population across all grades, but also to make sure that we could retain key spaces that we want to make sure that exists as part of the programming, such as specialty classrooms like STEM classroom, the art, the music classroom, because you need those learning spaces to ensure, again, that our kids are getting not just the core academics. Also holding on to our resource rooms so that we can still do push in and pull out programs in special education, as well as holding on to our sensory rooms. So again, Lincoln Bassett is the facility that it can accommodate all of those needs. Also, to share that this merger allows for greater teacher collaboration. Those of us who are educators, we know that the art of teaching is that we are continuously learning about how to best execute on the standards for grade level, the curriculum that we had at our hands. And it goes a long way when you are able to do that in collaboration with another grade level teacher. And right now, both at Lincoln Bassett and at Wexler, or grade level teachers are isolated, meaning if I am a first grade teacher, it's just me. I don't have another partner in my building for me to engage with and even come together when it's time for like grade level team meeting and say, hey, this is the standard. This is what I've been teaching. This is how my kids are doing. How are your kids doing? How are you approaching it? I'm having a hard time unpacking it. There is the art of teaching that comes from that collaboration, and this merger allows for that, that it will disrupt that isolation that happens right now, both at Lincoln Bassett and also at Wexler. The other point to note in the next slide is that with this merger, we are able to keep a single unified zone, meaning that we get to maintain the current boundaries that exist right now. So in this image that I have here for you, you can see how right now Wexler and Lincoln Bassett are right bumped against each other by that red line that you see in this image. There are 6 aldermanic wards that are serviced by Bassett and by Wexler. So again, this simply means we bring them together. They stay as one attendance zone. It's not like we're asking one side of the city to have to now travel across New Haven to get to another space. They are within the same attendance zone. So that was one of the advantages of choosing these 2 particular schools to do the merger when we know we have other schools that are also dealing with low enrollment. In terms of the next steps, there is a design team that will be put together. I have always said from day one that I am not interested in doing things to community, but in doing things with community. And this is about making sure that we have a whole project plan laid out that would allow for membership from both Lincoln Bassett and from Wexler Grant to come together into a design team similar to when you saw me do the putting together of the strategic operating plan, that there will be particular roles, different stakeholders, that we would bring them together so that they will be the ones informing the programmatic and the operational recommendations that will be made for this new school that will result as this merger. Things that they will be working on, for example, once the design team is put together, representative, of course, of NHPS staff, but also community representatives, they're going to be breaking up into subcommittees. There will be, for example, one committee that will talk about, the master schedule. What do we want that to look like? They will talk even about the layouts. How do we want? We know this is now going to become a pre-K3 all the way to 8th grade. How do we want the floors to be utilized, even though we do have a layout already that the architects were able to do, right, as a starting point, but this committee will be able to work on that. There will be another subcommittee that will work around culture and climate. Like, what are the things that we want to establish now that we are one? Not that we say, hey, we are in Lincoln Bassett facility. That means that we're going to run the way that Lincoln Bassett runs right now. That is not what we're saying. We're saying we're bringing 2 communities together. We're going to build something together that is new and that reflects the values and the aspirations of both communities. Even to consider, what do we want to call ourselves now that they will come together as one? knowing that that may be a little complex because already Lincoln Bassett, right, represents a merger from back in the day, and Wexler Grant also represents a merger from back of the day. But again, who are we to dictate to our community that it should be what is important to the community for them to be able to have the input and the voice? Please know that this merger has been done as a result of all the listening that you heard me say that I was conducting when I entered the district in July of 2023, because I wanted to make sure that I was learning and understanding our needs. And please know that through this merger, it is my first action towards the 10-year plan that I'm still working to bring to you in terms of where are we now and where are we going to be in the future, so that we can get again at that operational efficiencies that also takes into account our financial situation. So with that, I am going to pause for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. Any questions or comments? Mr. Wilcox and then Dr. Joyner.
Yes, just thank you for this information. I appreciate the care that's gone into crafting this plan. I think it's a good one. I think it's also necessary. And as you're saying, it's probably, first steps in realizing a 10-year facility and operations plan to address the needs of our buildings and the education, the enrollment trends. And so I think that's a great point to highlight that this is, from what I'm hearing, you're not saying, okay, one and done. What you're saying is you're carefully looking at all these things as you all are putting together these plans for how we can move forward. So I appreciate that. I do think it's unfortunate anytime, we're creating a disruption in some of our schools. So I am very happy to hear the deliberations that are going into this and the next steps of bringing the groups together to be able to work out these details. I would imagine that would include also parents and guardians of the children, and where appropriate, the children themselves also, building out this new school. And if I'm hoping that we can also, as this happens, if there's new things in terms of identity or facelift of some of these common areas in the school, that we can find some of our scant capital funds to help this new combined school relaunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner?
First of all, I think we should, in every occasion, when our staff perform above in the call of duty, let them know how much we appreciate it. I've gotten calls from Dr. Negron on Sundays. She called me when she was away in training because she thought some of the matters that we were discussing were very urgent. And so that means that she was not only working on what she was doing there, she was probably going back to her room and working on all these other things. I've gotten the same response from Keisha Hannons and from my own daughter and from Linda Hannons. And this was really Christine DeNegro. This is a dedicated group of people. And what I'm seeing is at least at this level, an application of the principles that Dr. Comer outlined and that we train people on when you're trying to affect change. First of all, collaboration, so that you involve all the stakeholders, but also recognizing that the final say is up to the board and the superintendent. But we want to hear from you. No fault problem solving. There's so much energy in an organization. There's only so much energy in an organization. And so when you spend time blaming, that's less time spent on solving problems. And in any machine, friction is what eventually causes that machine not to function. And in human systems, it's the same thing. So trust is critically important. and then trying to build consensus, recognizing that everybody doesn't get what they want, but whatever you come to that is morally defensible and intellectually responsible and fiscally, those three areas. Can we afford it? Is it righteous? And does it make sense from a rational standpoint? And so the organizations around us, the state legislatures, the governor, the federal Department of Education, all those institutions can pervert us in a way that gets us off task, but we can't allow that to happen. And we have to keep working together, being respectful of one another. There's enough wisdom in this system and enough righteous energy in it so we can get through this stuff. But you still gotta have some change, and you have to pay. Everything has a price tag. So let me thank you for that and encourage you to just keep working in that direction and to keep thinking outside the paradigm.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Seeing no other discussion, that completes your report. You have another?
Actually, it does not. I did also want to give you just a verbal update on where we are related to the budget. Ms. Hannons and I, as well as the team, have continued to look at that $23 million gap. Right now, we have been going through looking at any right-sizing opportunities that may exist within our high schools. Last year, remember, we did some right-sizing as it related to our K-8s. Now we're going to take a close look at our high schools, as well as we are going contract by contract to also see are there opportunities there when we can consider what is the scope of that contract, what is it supporting, is there an opportunity to bring contracts together so that we can save some money? Is there some work that maybe we could also bring back in-house, even though we are limited, right, in staff? But all that to say that we are doing our due diligence because we know, as you referenced earlier, Dr. Joyner, that we are cognizant of the burden that goes to our local taxpayers when we are talking about a $23 million gap. So those are some of the things we're doing before we're able to bring back the budget again to share it with FNO and hopefully then bring it back to the board before we get your approvals to then go to the Board of Alders, because we are scheduled for April 24th, Linda? April 24th. So all of that to say, we're working on it because we're trying to reduce that $23 million gap.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. And thank you, team, for working. Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you for that update. I do think that this is, it's the sad reality that we have with Connecticut's inequitable per pupil funding, where systems that are already, I mean, I've been on the board now for 6 years. Every single year is an exercise in cutting, in trimming, in holding programs back, making decisions. Our financial team is forced to make 100, 1,000 little decisions that can affect, like whether or not to hire an experienced teacher to come in that would be at a high step, which would money that they should be paid, whether or not to hire that experienced teacher or not because of the budget hit. And that's not something that other districts might not be having to make some of those same decisions. They're thinking about having the best team, the new teachers that are our future experienced teachers, and how do we keep and retain and hire other experienced teachers. And so that is why some of these bills that are before the Education Committee and then hopefully in front of the rest of the legislature is going to be so key, because that's going to be the difference between having these these things work, having enough special education teachers, having enough plumbers, having enough librarians, social workers, et cetera. So I think it's the sad reality. I do recommend, and I think that's something that's really necessary this year, is when we present this in previous years, we're presenting a hopeful picture. And then we have a mitigation plan, which is also hopeful. And then we spend the year chasing the plan and trying to make that work. I think we really need to just be able to show this is the reality of not having these additional funds that would come in from doing something like should have been done from the beginning, indexing the ECS formula to inflation. That should have been done from the beginning. Should also have been fully funded from the beginning. But understanding that it might take some time to ease into things. Well, it's been a long time since Connecticut made the bold steps of changing how they did the funding. It's time to finish their job. And I think that it's important for the district to be able to show this is the real cost. So we just heard about a planned merger. It's going to be unfortunate for people to be hit with unplanned or hastily planned or harsh reality planned of cuts that are going to have to come to programs that are going to further harm kids that already have trauma scores off the chart, already 75% plus reduced lunch, free and reduced lunch eligible, English language learners, immigrants, homeless folks, et cetera. So I do think that's something that we have to just show the sad reality of where this is going to go. And that does not even take into account anything at the federal level. So thank you very much for this update. I look forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Negron?
That does complete my update.
Thank you, Dr. Negron. Next on the agenda is the President's Report. I want to share appointments for our committees and roles. So for Finance and Operations, I want to appoint the board members, Matt Wilcox, Orlando Yarborough, Ms. Downer, Chair, Mr. Wilcox, Vice Chair, Orlando Yarborough. For Teaching and Learning, members, Dr. Joyner, Dr. Benitez, Chair, Dr. Joyner, Vice Chair, Dr. Benitez, and all board members are a part of this committee per policy. For Head Start, I want to assign the members, Mr. Wilcox, Dr. Benitez, Mr. Juarez. For Chair, Mr. Wilcox, Vice Chair, Dr. Benitez. For Governance, have the board members, Dr. Benitez, Ms. Downer, Mr. Juarez. For Chair, Dr. Benitez. For Vice Chair, Ms. Downer. Food Service Task Group, appoint there Orlando Yarborough, Mr. Wilcox. For Chair, Orlando Yarborough. For Vice Chair, Mr. Wilcox. Facilities Naming Committee, appoint Dr. Joyner. Chair, Dr. Joyner. Citywide School Building, Mr. Wilcox, Ms. Downer. The chair is Mr. Zinn, Vice Chair, Mr. Wilcox. So say anything else?
First of all, I think they're great. I'd like to comment on that because I think I need to reinforce what you're doing.
Okay, thank you.
First of all, I think you're bringing a level of emotional stability, because I've been on this board for 10 years and I'm embarrassed to think about how some of the things that happened, including one thing that I did. And you are very calm, high level of emotional intelligence as well as intellectual ability. And you've given leadership to people who have worked very, very hard in those particular areas. And quite frankly, are super smart people. And then we finally have a mayor that's more interested in healing the community, leading the community, fighting for the community than he is in patronage. Yeah, I said it. And I certainly appreciate that. And Mr. Suarez, I know a little bit about you, but certainly you have a phenomenal spirit and a phenomenal desire to help people beyond yourself. And I know that from the Columbus days. And so I'm really, really happy at this point at where we can go and how much we can do in the face of incredible adversity. So thank you, Dr. Yarber.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. So just a brief reflection. As a board, as a district, we have a lot of work to do as a board. So this team is to help us to get that work done in union and partnership with our staff and leaders of this district and this city. Nothing else from me. All right, thank you. That's my first appointment. Okay. Teaching and learning and facilities naming reports, Dr. Joyner.
First of all, there would be no facilities naming report, but what I want to put on the radar is that our greatest challenge, even in terms of the financial challenge that we face, is how effective we are with students at risk. I always felt that at every level of education, if a teacher can build a working relationship with the most difficult kid in the class, then that teacher can be very effective. If a principal can identify the kids in the school that can create the most difficulty and convert them into kids that will defend the school, then that principal can be successful. I'm not telling you about what I believe, I'm telling you about what I know. And if a superintendent can create programs that will help students at risk understand that this is an opportunity for you to change your life trajectory. Over the course of my life, I've been a gang member. I work with gang members, and it's noted in the New Haven Register and other places. I've attended national gang summits. And unfortunately, I've had family members that have been the victims of gang violence. And there's an old saying that hurt people hurt people. And if you had an idea of what some of these young people have gone through that has gotten them to a space where they feel that it's okay to take another person's life, if we can identify them early, if we can create programs that satisfy 3 conditions, I call it the great I am. If you wanna help kids, you have to provide interest, which causes them to pay attention, which also causes them to transmit those experiences into their memory. And of course, those are the most 3 critical attributes of learning for anybody. We work hard at stuff that interests us. And we pay attention. Now, you don't have to worry about somebody paying attention to something that they care about. And then it enters into episodic memory, procedural memory, and emotional memory. And you can turn kids around. I know because I was one of those kids, and I also can give you living adults right now that I work with, and they change their lives. But you can't be afraid of them. You have to let them know, no matter how angry you are, we still have rules and boundaries in this space. And some of the best people to help you do that are people who have made that journey themselves and turned their lives around. Last summer, Mayor Elica gave a grant to a young man that I mentor to help him support his boxing program. He's produced 4 champions. And those kids are in a space every day, and they feel so good about themselves that they don't respond to provocation in the community. And part of his success is because he had a mayor that saw the wisdom of putting money into something like that. And I was with him a couple of days ago, and I asked him how did he do when he went to the national championships. He said, well, the 2 of my boys won a national championship, and they're brothers. So instead of being out in the street instead of going out at night stealing cars, they're with him. And so we're gonna have to, I'm gonna ask at the next meeting, I'm gonna make a motion to create a committee to look at what we're doing with students at risk, to first of all, get a clear sense of what at risk means. Because you can be rich and at risk, but poverty complicates everything. And that I want to gather people across the city that know a lot about this, that may have had life experiences that are, or may have had family experiences that, and to try to, in addition to doing all of these things with school mergers, that we can create a curriculum and a set of experiences for students who have so much less than they need in order to excel in life. And I'm gonna bring some of them in to testify. Because when you go from being a thief, a burglar, and a car stealer to being a correction officer working on your master's, I think you might have something to say about how you help people like you. And so, and then there's some young ladies. So I'm gonna bring them in to testify and whatever. We have a young man in this school district that grew up in a single parent home, and he ended up being a warden. He was a warden of a prison. And having watched his family, every child in that family is productive. And you ought to talk to the mother that raised those children. So that is our next move. You know, what we do to the least among us is critically important. And I think that we have done it before in New Haven, and I think we can create an experience for at-risk youth that will help them understand that they have a responsibility to turn their lives around, and we're gonna help. So that concludes my teaching and learning report.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion? Thank you. Next, Head Start report, citywide school building report, F&O report. Mr. Wilcox?
All right, so thank you. The Head Start report will be extremely brief because we had to play musical committee meeting slots. And it's been moved to tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. The information's posted on the website. And the reason for the move was because we had to move the citywide building stewardship committee to last Thursday, where we did meet. The stewardship report was presented. It should be posted. You'll notice if you take a look at it, which I recommend, a new addition is the first draft of a restroom report. We're going to I'll talk about it again in connection to finance and operations, but we are going to have as a standard part of the stewardship report, information presented about various restroom issues, work orders, vandalism, including also some of the upcoming projects that are being designed and built out and bid out, et cetera, for utilizing some of the funds that the city infused into our building, made available to infuse into our buildings. You're going to see some of the results. My understanding is in some restroom repairs. So that is something that's there. I'll also just add that city engineer Zinn and Principal Benora gave an update on the adult education build-out space and reported that the bidding closed, and I think they made an award for the construction contract. He was pleased that the numbers were coming in at or below what they were hoping and projecting, so that's good news with all the uncertainty and construction costs that this is coming in, and I expect we'll see a contract coming through on that. Happy to answer any questions if there are any, or attempt to. Hearing none, I can pop into the finance and operations report. In addition to the action items that we've already discussed and we heard a lot of information on, we've also had We received the February 2025 financial report. Of concern is that the additional funding coming from the city is reflected in our CFO's and her team's projections, and it hasn't really changed our deficit amount because other costs and things, as the real costs come in and are accounted for, that it's ending up at a wash, but they're still working on that, as the superintendent has already said. I know from reports, they're not only looking at next year, but there's continued look at cutting costs this year to fit into the allocated budget. I also mentioned the restroom report. We had good conversation about this at the F&O meeting. And if anybody has any suggestions, please let the committee, Finance and Operations Committee, as well as the superintendent, about what you would like to see in that restroom report. We discussed work orders, when work orders are closed, why are they closed, reported the work that Mr. Aline and Mr. Carter talked about, working with folks as they're closing out work orders to make sure that if a work order is incomplete, but that individual's done with it, that doesn't mean that the work order necessarily needs to be closed. There's still work to be done. So those are some examples. And we've also talked about having a focus on restrooms. And that might mean that we need to have either a group that takes a look at this, or that I think should involve some students, just to kind of take a look at not only what's being planned, but what needs to be done to make these work. I think, trying to remember, it's at the broken windows.
The broken glass theory.
Broken glass theory. I think a lot is decided on the state of the restrooms, and we have a lot of challenges, and I think we need to have new ways of thinking about, I'm not going to say paradigm, I'm not going to steal someone's line, but we need new ways of thinking about how we address some of those issues so that we can also lower the real cost of vandalism, which the report does show some of the things. One little thing ripped up might cost $1,700.
Yeah.
And you multiply that by 10, 15 bathrooms in a building, it starts to really add up. So I just want to thank everybody for working on that. Thank you.
And I would encourage you to use paradigm. We want to make it a thing.
We need bingo cards.
Any discussion? Thank you very much, Mr. Wilcox. Governance report, Dr. Benitez.
Good evening, Board of Education members and the public. We have not met yet this month. We will be meeting on Thursday, and I should report after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez.
Feel better.
Yes, feel better.
Thank you.
Have food service comments, and then I'm going to make a comment before we adjourn. One, the staff and leaders of the food service team continue to do a good job, and I appreciate their work in leadership. The food service department and the school nurses are working together to continue to improve our process as it relates to food allergies, and to look over our policy and see if anything needs to be adjusted. And again, I want to highlight the Food Gap subgroup just for their innovation. They could really sit back and do things the way they've always done them, but each time they serve during a school break, they collect data as to which families are being served, and they ask those families what's working for you, what's not working for you. And right now, they're even looking into delivery. So just want to thank the leaders there and the school district and the community partners who all work together. Any questions or comments? All right, thank you. One, I just want to thank the board members and this team for going back to the president's report, just my process around the appointments. I know it took a lot of time, but thank you for the many conversations and just me allowing me to understand a little bit more how each committee works, how the district works, and what would be most advantageous for us. So thank you for allowing that process and being in conversation and answering my many, many questions. So thank you. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. So moved and seconded. All right, let's vote. Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox.
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Downer.
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Colon is not here. Mr. Musa's not here. Mayor Eliker.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.